In the early hours of September 26, 1983, the Soviet Union came closer to nuclear war than almost anyone realized at the time. There were no public warnings, no speeches, no visible crisis. The danger unfolded in silence, inside a concrete bunker south of Moscow, where a single officer sat in front of glowing screens that were about to decide the fate of the world. Stanislav Petrov was not a general, not a politician, and not a man expected to make history. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, assigned to monitor the early warning system designed to detect American nuclear missile launches. His role was simple on paper and terrifying in reality. If the system confirmed an attack, he was required to report it immediately. That report would move up the chain of command and could trigger a nuclear retaliation within minutes. The Cold War in 1983 was at one of its most dangerous points. Relations between the United States and the Soviet Union had deteriorated sharply. NATO had deployed new missiles in Europe. Soviet leadership believed that a surprise American first strike was possible. Intelligence agencies, including the KGB, were actively searching for signs that the United States was preparing for war. Fear had become policy. Shortly after midnight, the warning system suddenly activated. A missile launch was detected from the territory of the United States. Then another, and another. The screens indicated that intercontinental ballistic missiles were heading toward the Soviet Union. According to protocol, this was the moment when Petrov was supposed to report a confirmed nuclear attack. Everything in the room pointed toward catastrophe. The system was classified as highly reliable. Engineers had assured the military that false alarms were nearly impossible. The political context suggested that war was plausible, and yet something did not feel right to Petrov. The number of detected missiles was small. Too small. A real American first strike, he reasoned, would involve hundreds of warheads, not a handful. Petrov understood what was at stake. If he reported the launch as real, and it turned out to be a false alarm, the Soviet Union might initiate a nuclear response that would kill millions. If he reported it as false and it was real, the Soviet Union could be destroyed without warning. There was no safe choice. The system demanded certainty, but certainty did not exist. Against regulations, Petrov made a decision that would later be described as a violation of duty. He reported the alert as a system malfunction. He told his superiors that the warning was false. For several minutes, the bunker remained in a state of unbearable tension as everyone waited for confirmation from ground-based radar. If missiles were truly incoming, radar would detect them soon. Those minutes passed slowly. No missiles appeared on radar. The alert was eventually confirmed to be false. The early warning system had misinterpreted reflections of sunlight, off clouds as missile launches. A technical flaw combined with political paranoia had nearly triggered a nuclear war. At the time, Petrov was not praised. He was not celebrated as a hero. His decision embarrassed the system. It exposed flaws in Soviet technology and doctrine. Officially, the incident was buried. For years, no one outside a small circle knew how close the world had come to destruction. What makes this story darker is not just the mistake of a machine. It is the fact that the system worked exactly as designed. It detected a threat and demanded escalation. The only thing that stopped it was a human being who chose doubt over obedience. Petrov did not save the world in a dramatic sense. He did not confront an enemy or uncover a secret plot. He simply refused to trust what he was seeing when logic told him it made no sense. One officer, one decision, one moment of hesitation, and history went on as if nothing had happened. But inside the Soviet intelligence and military apparatus, the incident left a quiet scar. It revealed how fragile the balance truly was, and how easily misinterpretation could become annihilation. The plans of the United States had not been aggressive that night, but they were misunderstood, and that misunderstanding almost ended everything. In the hours and days following the false alarm, the Soviet military moved quickly to suppress discussion of what had happened. The incident involving the early warning system was classified. At the highest level, reports were rewritten, terminology softened, and responsibility carefully diffused. Officially, there had been no crisis, no near launch, no moment when the fate of the country rested on a single decision. The system, at least on paper, remained reliable. For Stanislav Petrov, the aftermath was not what history might expect. He was not promoted or decorated. Instead, he was quietly criticized for procedural violations. According to regulations, his role was not to analyze or judge the data, but to report it. By questioning the system, he had stepped outside his authority. From the perspective of the command structure, this was a dangerous precedent. Obedience mattered more than outcome. Inside the Soviet intelligence community, including the KGB, the incident caused deep discomfort. At the time, the USSR was operating under Operation Ryan, an intelligence program designed to detect signs of an imminent American nuclear attack. Analysts were trained to interpret ambiguous signals as potential indicators of war. This mindset created an environment where technical data was reinforced by political fear. The false alarm fit perfectly into this logic. The system detected missiles because everyone expected missiles. Petrov's decision disrupted that logic. He did not deny the data. He questioned its meaning. This distinction was crucial and deeply unsettling. If a single officer could override a system designed to remove human doubt, then the system itself was flawed. Yet admitting that flaw would undermine decades of doctrine built around automation, speed, and certainty. Subsequent internal reviews confirmed that the satellite system had serious limitations. It relied on specific lighting, conditions, and had not been fully tested in real-world scenarios. Engineers acknowledged that false positives were possible, but these findings were kept internal. Public acknowledgement would raise questions not only about technology, but about command responsibility and strategic stability. Within the KGB, analysts quietly revised threat assessments. The incident suggested that American actions were being misread not because of hostile intent, but because of systemic paranoia. There was no evidence that the United States had planned a limited missile launch that night. No exercise, no covert operation, no strategic deception. The danger had come from interpretation, not from planning. This realization was deeply troubling. For years, Soviet intelligence had focused on uncovering hidden American plans. The assumption was that danger came from secrecy and deception on the other side. The Petrov incident revealed a different threat: self-generated catastrophe. The system was capable of creating its own enemy. Petrov himself returned to routine duty, but the psychological impact lingered. He later described the event not as heroism, but as a moment of helplessness. He had been given incomplete information and forced to make an irreversible decision under impossible pressure. There had been no guidance for uncertainty. The system had assumed that certainty would always exist. As months passed, the Cold War continued as if nothing had happened. Diplomatic tensions remained high. Military exercises intensified. NATO and Warsaw Pact forces prepared for scenarios that mirrored the nightmare Petrov had glimpsed on his screens. The world moved forward, unaware that it had nearly ended due to a technical error and a misread signal. What makes the story darker is how little changed afterward. The warning systems remained active. The protocols remained rigid. The belief in rapid response survived intact. The lesson was learned only partially and quietly. No structural reform could fully eliminate the risk of misinterpretation because the system itself was built on fear. Petrov had misread the plans of the United States that night, but in doing so, he may have read the situation more accurately than the system, designed to protect the country. There had been no attack to respond to, only a reflection of sunlight, amplified by suspicion and transformed into a threat. The deeper story was no longer about American intentions. It was about how close the Soviet Union had come to destroying itself by trusting machines more than judgment. And that realization, quietly shared among intelligence professionals, would haunt the final years of the Cold War. As the memory of the false alarm faded from official reports, its implications quietly reshaped thinking inside parts of the Soviet security apparatus. The incident involving Stanislav Petrov exposed a contradiction that no amount of secrecy could fully resolve. The Soviet Union had invested enormous resources in building systems designed to eliminate hesitation. Automation, redundancy, and rigid protocols were meant to ensure that no individual could delay a response to an enemy attack. Yet in the most critical moment, it was hesitation that prevented catastrophe. Within intelligence and military circles, the Petrov incident became an unspoken reference point. It was rarely mentioned directly, but it influenced discussions about reliability, escalation, and control. Officers understood that the early warning system had not failed in a technical sense. It had detected a signal and processed it correctly according to its design. The failure was conceptual. The system could not distinguish between data and meaning. It could only escalate. This realization was especially troubling for the KGB, which had spent years searching for hidden American strategies under Operation Ryan. Analysts were trained to identify subtle indicators of an impending first strike. Changes in communications, troop movements, economic signals, even shifts in political rhetoric. The Petrov incident suggested that the most dangerous signal might not come from Washington at all. It could originate inside Soviet systems themselves, amplified by expectation and fear. At the same time, NATO was conducting exercises that appeared increasingly realistic to Soviet observers. Command procedures, communications drills, and simulated nuclear decision-making blurred the line between training and preparation. From Moscow's perspective, these exercises looked indistinguishable from rehearsals for war. The Soviet leadership believed that the United States might attempt to hide a real attack inside a routine exercise. This belief intensified paranoia and shortened reaction time. Petrov's decision stood in contrast to this environment. He did not interpret the alert through ideology or doctrine. He relied on logic and probability. A limited missile launch made no strategic sense. The absence of corroborating radar data reinforced his doubt. In effect, he applied human reasoning where the system demanded mechanical certainty. This approach was never intended to be part of the process. The uncomfortable truth was that Soviet strategic stability depended on individuals violating procedures. If every officer followed instructions without question, the system would eventually respond to a false signal with real weapons. This paradox could not be resolved within existing doctrine. Admitting it would undermine the credibility of deterrence itself. As a result, the incident was absorbed into institutional silence. No formal lesson was taught. No doctrine was rewritten to encourage doubt. Instead, the system continued to operate as before, relying on the assumption that catastrophic errors would remain rare. The burden of judgment remained unofficially placed on individuals, without recognition or protection. Years later, when fragments of the story became public, Petrov was described as the man who saved the world. Inside the Soviet system, the interpretation was far less dramatic and far more unsettling. He had exposed a weakness that could not be fixed without dismantling the logic of rapid nuclear response. From that perspective, his action was not a triumph, but an anomaly. The deeper meaning of the event lay in what it revealed about power and control. Nuclear systems promised certainty, speed, and deterrence. In reality, they created situations where misunderstanding could escalate faster than reason. The plans of the United States that night had not been aggressive. There had been no deception, no hidden strike, no secret maneuver. The danger had emerged from the interaction between technology and expectation. Petrov did not know the full context. He had no access to intelligence assessments, political intentions, or diplomatic signals. He acted with incomplete information, under pressure, and against protocol. That act of disobedience prevented an irreversible decision. Yet the system he served could not acknowledge that truth without undermining itself. By the mid-1980s, as tensions slowly began to ease, the Petrov incident remained buried, but its shadow lingered. It served as a silent reminder that survival during the Cold War depended not only on strategy and strength, but on moments of doubt inside systems designed to eliminate doubt entirely. As the Cold War entered its final decade, the Soviet leadership began to reassess the risks of escalation, more quietly than publicly acknowledged. While official rhetoric remained rigid, internal discussions reflected a growing awareness that the greatest danger no longer came from deliberate aggression, but from misinterpretation. The Petrov incident was never cited openly, yet it influenced thinking in subtle ways. It demonstrated that the margin for error in nuclear decision-making was far thinner than doctrine suggested. Within military command structures, confidence in early warning technology was shaken, though never abandoned. Engineers improved algorithms, adjusted sensor calibration, and expanded cross-checking procedures. But these changes addressed symptoms, not the core problem. The system still demanded rapid decisions under uncertainty. Time remained the most dangerous variable. The logic of deterrence required speed, yet speed reduced the opportunity for reflection. The contradiction remained unresolved. For the KGB, the incident reinforced a broader concern about intelligence interpretation. Analysts had spent years attempting to predict American intentions by assembling fragments of information into coherent threat narratives. Operation Ryan encouraged officers to assume the worst in ambiguous situations. The Petrov case revealed how easily this mindset could transform technical noise into strategic panic. It suggested that intelligence failure did not always involve missing information. Sometimes it involved believing information too readily. Despite these realizations, institutional change was limited. The Soviet system was not designed to reward doubt. Admitting vulnerability risked political consequences, both domestically and internationally. Acknowledging that a single officer's intuition had prevented catastrophe would undermine the image of control projected by the state. As a result, the incident remained classified, discussed only in narrow circles and stripped of personal significance. Petrov himself faded into obscurity. He left active duty, received no honors, and carried the psychological weight of the decision alone. In later years, he described the experience as deeply isolating. He had acted according to logic, yet against expectation. The system neither condemned him publicly nor embraced him privately. Silence was the only response. Meanwhile, relations between the superpowers began to shift. Arms control talks resumed. Communication channels improved. The immediate threat of sudden nuclear war gradually receded. Yet the fundamental structure of nuclear deterrence remained intact. Thousands of weapons stayed on alert, governed by systems that could still misinterpret signals under the right conditions. Only after the collapse of the Soviet Union did fragments of the story begin to emerge. Former officials spoke cautiously. Documents were referenced but rarely released in full. The narrative that reached the public simplified events, framing them as a near miss avoided by human judgment. While accurate, this version overlooked the darker implication. The system had relied on disobedience to function safely. For historians, the Petrov incident became a case study in accidental survival. It illustrated how close the Cold War came to catastrophe, not because of secret American plans, but because of how those plans were imagined. Fear filled the gaps where certainty was absent. Technology amplified that fear, and doctrine legitimized it. The deeper story, however, lies not in the moment itself, but in what followed. The absence of reform suggested an unspoken acceptance of risk. Nuclear peace was maintained not through flawless systems, but through luck and individual restraint. This was never stated, but widely understood among those who knew the details. As the world moved into a post-Cold War era, the lessons of that night remained relevant. Early warning systems still operate. Rapid response doctrines still exist. The balance between automation and judgment remains unresolved. The Petrov incident did not end the danger. It merely revealed it. In this sense, the officer who misread the plans of the United States did more than prevent a single catastrophe. He exposed the fragility of a system built on certainty in an uncertain world. And that exposure, quietly absorbed and never fully addressed, became one of the Cold War's most unsettling legacies. In the decades that followed, the night of September 26, 1983, remained largely invisible to the public. There were no monuments, no official acknowledgements, and no immediate recognition of what had been avoided. The Soviet Union collapsed without ever formally admitting how close it had come to launching a nuclear retaliation based on a false signal. The silence surrounding the incident was not accidental. It reflected a deeper discomfort with the truth it revealed. Stanislav Petrov's decision did not fit the logic of deterrence. Nuclear strategy depended on predictability, automation, and rapid response. His choice introduced uncertainty into a system designed to eliminate it. By questioning the data, he undermined the premise that machines and procedures could guarantee safety. From an institutional perspective, this was dangerous knowledge. It suggested that survival depended not on doctrine, but on individual judgment. When the story finally emerged years later, it was often framed as heroism. Yet this framing obscured the darker reality. Petrov had not been trained to save the world. He had been placed in a position where catastrophe was a plausible outcome of routine duty. The system offered him no guidance for doubt, no protection for hesitation. He acted not because the system allowed it, but because it failed to anticipate the moment. The incident also challenged long-standing assumptions about enemy intent. There was no secret American plan that night, no covert strike, no deception hidden inside an exercise. The danger came from misinterpretation, shaped by fear and expectation. The Soviet Union had prepared so thoroughly for a surprise attack that it nearly created one in its own. Imagination. For intelligence services, the lesson was unsettling. The greatest threat was not always external. It could arise internally from the interaction between technology, doctrine, and psychology. Early warning systems could detect signals, but they could not interpret context. Intelligence assessments could identify risks, but they could also amplify paranoia. In such an environment, certainty became the enemy of safety. Petrov's case demonstrated that misreading the plans of an adversary could be as dangerous as missing them entirely. By assuming hostile intent where none existed, the system moved closer to catastrophe than any actual American action ever did. The irony was that restraint, not readiness, preserved peace. Today, the legacy of that night continues to resonate. Nuclear weapons remain on alert in multiple countries. Automated warning systems still operate under pressure to provide rapid answers. The balance between human judgment and machine certainty remains unresolved. The conditions that made the Petrov incident possible have not disappeared. They have merely evolved. The story is often told as a moment when one man saved the world. The deeper truth is more disturbing. The world was saved by chance, hesitation, and a violation of procedure. It survived not because the system worked, but because someone doubted it. In that sense, The officer who misread the plans of the United States did not simply prevent a Soviet response. He exposed a fundamental flaw in the logic of nuclear deterrence. The Cold War ended without resolving that flaw. It was carried forward into the future, embedded in systems that still rely on rapid decisions under uncertainty. The night passed, the screens went dark, and life continued as if nothing had happened. But beneath that normality lay a silent fact. History had turned on a single act of doubt. And in a world built on certainty, doubt was the most dangerous and the most necessary thing of all.